Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to today's webinar. I'm very pleased to say that we have Basware sponsoring the webinar today, and their client, Aggreko, is going to be talking about their shared services story, looking in particular at the critical steps to streamlining accounts payable. So I extend to you a very warm welcome indeed. Delighted that you could be joining us today. My name is Susie West, and I am obviously one of your presenters. I'm the founder and CEO at sharedserviceslink.com. I'm joined by Andrew Jess, Vice President UK at Basware, and Linda Black, who's the European and Middle East Business Systems Manager at Agreco. Unfortunately, Andrew Jess doesn't work at sharedserviceslink.com today, but he's obviously representing Basware. So let's have a look at the agenda. We've got the intention of this session, and then I'm going to be passing straight over to Andrew. He's going to be introducing the beginning part, the first part of the Aggreko shared services story, and in particular the critical steps to streamlining AP. And then we'd like to take your questions, please, in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. How that works is you submit those questions to me, and I will channel them to either Linda or through to Andrew in the last 10 minutes of the call. Just the sooner you get them to me, the more likely they are to be asked. So do bear that in mind. If we have a look at the intention of this session, so coming up on your screen now, the journey to streamline AP and especially to turn towards automation generally looks like the following. We've got the centralization and the consolidation and standardization of activities before we move to the automation. So centralization of the function, consolidation of systems, and standardization of the processes before most people really get their teeth into the automation piece. And it's really when they get to the automation piece that AP moves into a completely different league. KPIs are massively impacted in a very positive way. Service delivery changes significantly, and the service, the value that's given back to the company is really very impactful, and AP starts becoming a valuable business partner to the organization. This webinar in particular is looking at the fourth pillar. And just some key considerations. If we kind of try and tie some of the pillars in with each other, obviously they all interlink, and often the order can change slightly, but this seems to be the standard path that's typically taken. But it's very important that automation technology that is utilized by shared services organizations plugs into and optimizes the investments in their ERP, and obviously feeds into ensuring the continuous development of KPIs, as KPIs year on year only get tougher and tougher. And as I mentioned, in addition to this, the focus on service excellence and technology being an enabler for that to happen is key. There's a lot of pressure on shared services organizations to drive service excellence. So it's very important that the technology deployed absolutely supports that. So with that in mind, I'd now like to introduce a poll, our first poll question for the session, coming up on your screen now before I introduce Andrew Jess. So coming up on your screen now, I just want to get an idea as to what kind of organizations we've got represented on the webinar today. So this is a question about your invoices, your purchase invoices that you receive annually. This is all types of invoices, please. So all types of invoices that come into your AP environment and that you handle. How many invoices do you process per annum? Is it less than $250,000, $250,000 to $500,000, $500,000 to $750,000, between $750,000 and $1 million, or is it more than 1 million invoices? So if you can tick the box most appropriate to you, please. And I'll be closing the poll in just a while. We've got 57% of you responding, so there's the fourth bullet there, is between $750,000 and $1 million. So up to 66%, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results. Coming up on your screen very shortly indeed. You can see the results there. So we've got about 36% of you processing less than $250,000. Interestingly though, we've got quarter of you, so 24% processing more than 1 million. So we do have some large-scale, very large-scale organisations on the webinar today. So with that context in mind, I'd now like to hand over to our presenter, Andrew Jess, who is the Vice President UK at Fazware. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Susie. As far as background, my name is Andrew Jess, as Susie mentioned. I'm responsible for new business operations at Fazware UK. Prior to this, I was responsible for Fazware's North American consulting operations, both new implementation programs as well as performance improvement programs. And again, history prior to that was largely spent with business process improvement, SOX control and compliance, and remediation processing. So hopefully I can set some context from an environmental perspective for the Aggreko presentation that's to follow. Why has purchase-to-pay become strategic? These last few years, purchase-to-pay as a unified subject has become a well-recognized name in and around most of our offices. Why is this? Fundamentally, it's about control, compliance, visibility, efficiency, and savings. But taking that up another level, why? Again, it's really about risk mitigation for our organizations, as well as driving increases to net operating income for our businesses in these turbulent business environments. Purchase-to-pay is a vehicle for driving corporate performance forward, but it's also a vehicle to help reduce risk. If we look at a few of the points we have listed here, Aggreko was able to reduce its supply base by 50%, thus gaining better leverage of spend, reducing risk, propensity for fraud, and even further duplicate payments. Loomis Sales, as an organization, 85% of their suppliers they're now able to pay inside of 10 days, allowing them to put their capital to work for them. I believe a 2% net 10 discount equates to something in the order of a 36% APR on your monies, which is it's unbelievable value for money if you look at it from that perspective. Heineken, 90% of their invoices are processed without intervention from their AP team. They've accomplished this through alignment of their procurement and AP processes. Sonic Corporation, 97% of their invoices they're receiving electronically today. They're reducing cycle times, costs, FTEs needed to process, and they're increasing net operating income for their organization. Panasonic, AP costs were reduced by 60%. Again, focused on increasing net operating income for their organization. Why now? I've mentioned the turbulence in the business environment. I listened to BBC London on the way into the office day over day, talking about the UK and EU recessionary warnings, the future of the euro. Hopefully, Mr. Cameron has some success in Brussels today, ensuring defending the single market of the EU, but also putting the British interests at heart as well. But ultimately, all this boils down to risk and how SMB and large listed organizations deal with business on a day-to-day basis. So market realities remain challenging. Credit lines are still tightening. There's a strong focus on cash. Growth rates are questionable. And how do you manage profit levels and increase profit margins with potentially flat growth inside of your industry vertical? How do organizations cope with the flexibility required to deal with the thoughts of offshoring, onshoring, integration, with the overall organizational value chain as well as the supply chain. How do organizations deal with regulatory and compliance around prompt payment, tax simplification acts, and even for those organizations that are in a strong position to take advantage of M&A activity, how do you focus on effective and efficient integration of those new businesses? So market realities are raising common questions today. How do I manage and control my spend more effectively? How do I outperform my competition in times of uncertainty, i.e. increasing profitability levels or reducing time to market? How do I find untapped cost savings opportunities within the organization? Looking for broader working capital management strategies, for example. How do I build agility into my organization to support growth? Mainly, how do we get the best out of our people, our process, technology, and furthermore, how do we continue to tune performance over time? Because inevitably, it's about running faster in organizations today with the same amount of resource or horsepower. Answering these questions requires, in some way, shape, or form, purchase to pay. So taking control of what you can affect. So controlling cash and improving cash flow requires visibility into what's going on within the purchase to pay and the AP function. How do I optimize working capital? It requires not only an ability to increase velocity to cash on the day's sales outstanding side of things, but it also requires the ability to ensure prompt payment to be able to take advantage of potential discounts. How do you cut costs and eliminate process dysfunction? It requires looking at one deck of data and automation to help drive that performance. And how do you minimize risk and ensure compliance? It really requires the ability to control the overall purchase to pay and AP value chain. So why do organizations struggle to execute on these strategies today? I think, put simply, it's poor visibility across regions. It's lack of alignment and playing from the same deck of data across different regions. And it's overall a lack of process visibility and alignment across regions. So that being said, I think we have another poll question coming up from Susie.
So coming up on your screen now, you can see the poll question regarding to productivity. And what we mean by productivity is how many invoices are processed per FTE per annum. So for example, if you have 100,000 invoices coming into AP per annum and you have 10 people, that would mean your productivity is 10,000 invoices per annum per FTE. So we've had 25% of you vote. If you haven't voted, please do so. It's quite an easy sum to figure out. And when we're doing the productivity KPI, we include everybody within AP within that figure. So people in exception handling and supplier queries, they all go into the mix as well. So it should be a very, very easy figure for you to calculate, even if it's something that you don't always track. So just asking that question one last time. What's your productivity per FTE? Less than 10,000 invoices, 10,000 to 20,000, 20,000 to 50,000, 50,000 to 100,000, or over 100,000 invoices per annum. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, coming up on your screen now. So you can see that 43% of you are coming in at less than 10,000 invoices per annum, 43% between 10 and 20,000. 9% between 20,000 and 50,000, and 4% between 50 and 100,000 invoices per annum. And I think it will become clear that those kind of higher numbers can only really be achieved if you've got automation in play. Back to you, please, Andrew.
Thank you, Susie. So, differing priorities exasperate the problem. What this really comes down to is different stakeholders with different priorities across the organization. Finance is looking at liquidity ratios, AR collection periods, and AP days, while perhaps procurement's focused on savings and not working capital. AP is purely focused on process control and efficiency, while Treasury may be looking at cash position and currency volatility. And then you have the IT department, which is working on what fits their strategic agenda. Are we looking at outsourced solutions, on-premise solutions, et cetera, et cetera? So all of this ends leading to a fractured purchase-to-pay process. All the previous stakeholder priorities lead to fractured process resulting in trade risk, potentially, poor DPO and day sales outstanding performances, and inability to drive savings, efficiency, and compliance across the organization. Again, it's just creating a more challenging environment from which to manage risk and our contributions to operating income improvements as an AP or purchasing team. At this point, I'd like to hand over to Linda Black from Aggreko. Hopefully I've been able to set some general context, but Linda can tell us more about their shared services story.
Okay, the shared services story according to Aggreko. Just a quick summary of what I'm going to cover. A little introduction to Aggreko, a bit of background to the AP automation project, the challenges and the approach that we took in implementing AP automation, the benefits that we realised that go live and beyond, and some closing thoughts on some of the lessons that we personally have learned from the exercise. An introduction to Aggreko. As it says on screen, we are truly a world leader. We supply temporary power, temperature control and oil-free air solutions to companies around the world. We have 4,500 employees operating in 144 locations based in 34 countries. The Aggreko was listed on the stock exchange in November 2010, and we have been growing ever since. Just a little slide showing you a few pictures of some of the things that we do. We're involved in various different things, from creating ice rinks in the middle of summer to various projects for the US Navy and various other bits and pieces. Our most recent entry in here would be the World Cup in 2010, probably the most prestigious and well-known one so far. Aggreko Technology Services, who look after the systems within Aggreko. You can see here that we, yet again, for our 4,500 users, we have 5 primary locations, truly worldwide, and obviously it's a challenge to be able to support everyone in all the far-flung countries to the same extent. A bit of background about the AP automation project. We had some must-wins, and these must-wins were provided by the business. Originally we started looking for a document archiving system. Our offices were overflowing with copy invoices, and we were having real problems trying to find some storage for it. That was our original problem, and this is where it all started from. It very quickly grew arms and legs, and we discovered that there were so many other things that we actually needed to be able to achieve in order to become more efficient. Obviously we needed process uniformity across divisions. We work in various different countries, as I mentioned before. We were using the same ERP system, but every country was doing something slightly different. We had no uniformity whatsoever. We needed a slick approval process. It was taking us inordinate amounts of time to have supplier invoices approved. We were having problems with closing at month end. We would like to close on day 1 of month end. We were closing on month end +2, which obviously was not very helpful for the rest of the business. We wanted full visibility of the invoices through the whole AP process. We didn't have this. We were working on various fragmented spreadsheets and didn't have a true picture. And at times we were finding it very easy to lose invoices. We wanted to have easy preparation of month-end accruals. This was something which was a major headache for our business analysts across the area, and they were looking to find some easier way of having a very, very quick idea at month-end of what accruals were required. We needed easy access by the business analyst to the source AP documentation. Part of the problem at month-end was that we had our AP team busily photocopying and faxing through copies of purchase invoices to the business analyst to allow them to finish off and analyse the costs of the business. So, life pre-Basware in the Aggreko world. We have the Aggreko European finance team who initiated the project, and the original request, as I said, was just to have some way of scanning and archiving supplier invoices. This was causing us a major headache. The Aggreko business in continental Europe covers a number of geographies, languages, and they have a finance area with a shared service centre in Rotterdam. The Aggreko business in Northern Europe covers the UK, Southern Ireland and Norway, and operates with a central shared service centre yet again in Dumbarton. The current AP process in place was extremely manual. As I've mentioned before, we had spreadsheets coming out of our ears. We had no common process, even though we had the same ERP system. And the delays, because of the fact that managers were constantly out of the office, with the current ERP system, they had to be in the office in front of their computer or laptop to be able to approve any invoices. So at month end, this caused major headaches. We had the supplier invoices being sent out to our depots, not our shared service centres, and some of them were not finding their way to the shared service centre. I'm sure you can all understand and appreciate that one. And we had, obviously, from that a risk of non-payment, late payment or double payment of invoices, which obviously we were not happy with. So project initiation and selection. Once the decision had been made to implement AP automation, we took advice and we came out with two options, Basware and our ERP solution from our provider Lawson. We created very detailed statement of requirements, and both options were evaluated against each of all of these requirements. Basware came out head and shoulders as a preferred solution. It provided the automated approval flow and multiple approval limits available. In our ERP system, we had a very flat approval process, and we're not able to be as flexible as we wanted to be. Basware provided an extremely flexible solution for us. We had a contract module available for recurring invoice payments. The nature of our business is that we have a lot of, as we call them, non-PO invoices. The contract module allowed us to set up standard contract invoices to run in a similar fashion to PO invoices, which meant these did not then need to go back for approval every time we had a supplier invoice. We had the scanned invoice image, which was linked directly to our ERP system, so our business analysts could then, from our current ERP system, click a button and see the full detail, not just the scanned invoice, but the full audit trail of that invoice, where it had been, who had approved it, and all the steps it had taken through from scanning in to payment in our ERP system. The full audit trail was there for everyone to see. So the Basware solution is shown on this little diagram. Basically, our invoices appear through into the Basware server. The majority of these will be matched using the matching engine, which will match against the purchase order, and if this happens, the AP department do not do anything. Everything processes automatically straight through into our ERP system. Where there is a problem, it will be pushed out into the exception workflow, where the AP team can spend their time concentrating on the invoices which have a problem, as opposed to having to look at all the ones which really there is no need for them to take any interest in whatsoever. Implementation approach and the challenges. What were our challenges? Our biggest issue was the ERP integration challenge. It caused a go-live delay, and probably because of the fact that we just didn't anticipate having such a problem getting our current ERP system to speak to another system. The ERP tool worked fine, but we also required modifications to be made to MoveX, our system. And we hadn't considered that, we just presumed that everything was going to run smoothly. We had no other customers live with our combination of MoveX and Basware, so we didn't have a reference site which was 100% the same as Aggreko. Needless to say, we had a lot of work there, but we had a lot of assistance, and our partner, Basware's partner Ensys, worked very, very closely with our ERP partner to provide solutions for any problems that we had. The other challenge was the fact that we really realised that we needed to clean up the AP process prior to commencing the project. We needed to get our house in order before we started. We need to make sure that everyone is speaking about the same terminology, agree common configuration and processes. Even though we had a Northern Europe and Continental Europe team, those two teams worked completely differently, even though they were both shared service centres. We didn't fully consider the process outside AP as part of the project, and it was very important that we could speak to suppliers to amend invoices to include PO details at all times, not to have multiple POs in a single invoice. We looked at the approval process undertaken by the managers. We had two different approval processes running through in Dumbarton and Rotterdam, and we really needed to streamline that to make sure everyone was doing the same thing before we went live. Implementation. The project scope, we covered the two main European locations, as I mentioned before, Rotterdam with 10 staff and Dumbarton with 5. Invoice volumes were approximately 80,000 invoices per annum, split 50-50 between the sites. The languages covered are English, French, German, Spanish, Italian and Dutch. And you probably realise that we did have other languages in there, we just have chosen not to use those languages when running Colfax. Project team, we had a full-time project manager from the finance team, the AP manager from Rotterdam. We had 2 functional IT staff, and we had 3 Ensys staff from our Basware implementation partner. We first raised the requirement for the AP automation project in September 2007. We discussed statement of requirements March 2008, signed them off June 2008, with a go live in March 2009, and as I say, this was delayed from November 2008 due to our integration problems. How did the project go live go? To be honest, our actual project go live was very uneventful, extremely smooth, but we had carried out extensive testing and planning beforehand, and it definitely paid off. I would recommend it. We had no major technical challenges, and the AP staff actually found the system much easier to use than they had thought beforehand. Approvers were ecstatic with the system. Their approval process was so much more slick, and the fact that we could actually approve online in their BlackBerry and didn't have to come back into the office to them was a major boost. We had 2 locations going live at the same time, and it didn't cause us any issues whatsoever. We just had to make sure that we planned adequate support and resource at each location. What benefits have we realised since we've gone live? We, as I've mentioned before, now have full visibility to the business of invoice status and progress. We're now able to pinpoint bottlenecks, whether that be a process bottleneck or a particular person within the business who is holding up, whether it be from approval or whatever else, and we can resolve these easily and ease the month-end process. This can be done on a daily basis as opposed to waiting until month-end. Automated approval and approval reminder process. The AP team beforehand were keeping a track on a spreadsheet of all invoices that had gone out for approval, and manually using reminders on Outlook to send reminders back out to the approvers. This is happening automatically now, and it just makes life so much easier, and yet again, managers can approve on their BlackBerry, they don't need to be in the office. This results in faster responses to supplier queries. The information is more readily available, and it's easier for our AP team to respond. We've also set up a query screen in Basware Monitor, combining essential information which used to be on 2 or 3 different screens in our ERP system. It just makes life so much easier for our AP team. We now have the ability to perform consistent KPI reporting because we now have everyone adhering to a uniform process. So we're able to accurately quantify and monitor process using consistent parameters. It's actually causing some friendly rivalry across the countries and encouraging behaviour which is increasing efficiency and effectiveness. We have slicker month-end processes. Pre-Basware we closed, as I said before, month-end +2. We now close month-end -1, which we never thought we would ever achieve. The image link, our lovely document button, the business analysts have fallen in love with it. It gives us direct access to the scanned images and posting details, and you can see then we have a little button. Click the document button and hey presto, all the information appears on screen for them, showing not only the scanned image but also the history of what's happened to the invoice, basically from essentially end to end. So we are ecstatic with this. What additional benefits have we seen since we've gone live? We've added further detail to the contract module to get more benefit from it as we become more familiar with it. We have requested that it does slightly more for us, and that has been provided. We've created KPI reporting tools using the Basware KPI tool. We've added a number of new month-end reports. So once the base system was embedded, including, for example, the accruals report, we've added screens in Basware to support supplier queries, as I mentioned before. And we have now continued the rollout of Basware into other Aggreko business units. North America will go live in January, and just last week we went live with 4 more divisions in Europe and the Middle East, including Dubai. In planning for the future, we are in the process of creating project plans to roll Basware out into Australia and New Zealand. So as you can see, we are huge fans of it, and the rest of the business out with Europe and the Middle East are watching us very closely and extremely jealous of the progress that we have actually made. We have some reports. An example of some of the reports that we have are the average cycle time, a percentage of auto-matched invoices, and the percentage sent for approval in various different countries, as you can see. What additional benefits have we achieved since go live? This is going to sound rather strange, but we have actually closed the Rotterdam Shared Service Centre. You may think, why is that a benefit? But we had a large facility there in Rotterdam, which other functions were using, but have moved out over the years, and only AP was left, and the facility was far too big for us to keep it there. Because of the fact we'd implemented Basware, we had created a common platform with common processes throughout the area, so it was then easy to move the AP process out into each of the countries in a very short period of time with no, very importantly, no loss of service to the business. It just shows that Basware can operate equally successfully in centralised or decentralised model, and we are proof of that. We now do both. So some closing thoughts. Life post Basware. Basically, everyone in Europe is following the same uniform process, even although the Continental Shared Service Centre has been dissolved and processing devolved to the regional functions. We now have no spreadsheets required to track invoices, approvals, accruals. It just makes life so much easier. We have a much slicker month end, and it's so much easier to trace and eliminate the bottlenecks well in advance of the critical dates that we have. Our business users are much more comfortable with the whole approval process, and hence are more willing to work with the EP teams to ensure a smoother and more efficient process. We don't get constant requests for scanned copy invoices, and very importantly, we have now become an asset, seen as an asset to the business. We always were, but we're now seen as an asset to the business rather than a thorn on their side, which is very good news. Lessons learned. Looking backwards, what can we take from it? Basically, what I would say is do any housekeeping well prior to starting the project. It is very important. It is a pain, but it does reap benefits. Agree common processes and authorization levels, etc. prior to starting the project. Do your homework, basically. Ensure the process outside the AP team is considered. We didn't consider that and didn't realise how much of an impact it would have on them. Don't underestimate the ERP vendor involvement. Integration is not as simple as you think. We learned that lesson the hard way. You do need full robust UAT process in place with formal sign-off of acceptance to proceed to go live. As an IT person, I believe that we'd actually gone way overboard with UAT, but it did pay off because whenever we went live, We had no problems whatsoever. It was so smooth, it was unbelievable. Very, very importantly, and I can't emphasise this strongly enough, appoint a strong, dedicated, full-time business project manager. They are invaluable. I would now like to hand back to Andrew for some more information on the solution.
Thank you, Linda. I'll do a brief Bassware introduction and then we'll hand over back to Susie. So, who we are. Bassware has been in business for 26 years. We highly value the independent ratings by the analysts such as Gartner, AMR Research, Forrester, and the others who consistently rank us in the top 1 to 2 performers across P2P. Our DNA, if you will, is based in finance process automation. We've grown as a AP automation provider forward into sourcing and now, more importantly, into our open supplier network. We're about just over 1,000 employees globally and growing rapidly day over day, especially with our supplier network operations. We have over, I think, 1.5 million users these days and over 1,600 global customers with operations in just over 30 countries to serve our customers. As I mentioned before, our big focus now is on the growth of our supplier and buyer network to support finance process optimization for our software and service customers. Why companies choose Bassware? I think fundamentally we focus on procurement and finance process optimization through visibility, control, compliance, and we really try to deliver agile solutions with reusable best practices and integration points. So our focus is really on differentiation through resource and the experiences we've accumulated over the last 26 years. You know, our goal as an organization is to be a safe pair of hands, able to create value for our customers. Bassware's offerings. As a whole, Bassware focuses on, as I mentioned before, we were born from a back office finance and invoice automation service provider. We strongly believe that you need to have your back office finance operations in order before you can take advantage of transactional procurement and strategic sourcing. I think these days Bassware has moved upstream from invoice automation into procurement solutions, whether it be e-procurement, contract lifecycle management, and online sourcing. But as I mentioned before, our big growth area to add value to our customers is through that Bassware connectivity layer. You see there, whether it be purchasing catalogs, purchase message exchanges, scan and capture services to remove paper out of the business from day one, as well as the e-invoicing and e-billing exchange to allow organizations to focus on efficiency, reducing DSO and DPO as an organization, allowing companies to take advantage of savings opportunities that are out there. I believe as an organization, we've now integrated with just over 300 different distinct ERP platforms. But prior to joining Bassware, I didn't know there were that many ERP platforms out there. But nonetheless, we've developed templates for about 300 ERP platforms today. So that's quite beneficial in being able to reuse the integration points from time over time and to reduce the amount of time and effort involved in integrating with the different ERP platforms. And all of our solutions are backed by our consulting and professional services organizations, focused on upfront identifying what the as-is state is and what the goals of your organization may be, and helping to form a to-be plan together with the sponsors within your organization and developing a change plan there. We also do have over 65 partners around the globe, one of which being NSYS Systems, who was responsible for the support and delivery of the the Aggreko solution. It just broadens our reach to our potential customers around the world. I believe at this point we have another poll question from Ms. Susie West.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. So coming up on your screen, Andrew was talking there about e-invoicing being a fundamental part of the Basware solution today. So I'd just like to really understand what your e-invoicing penetration is with in your own accounts payable environment. So when we talk about e-invoicing, we're not including email PDFs within that definition. We're talking about, as Andrew was pertaining to just earlier, very much system-to-system pure data flow. So what percentage of your invoices do you process electronically? Is it less than 20%, 21 to 40%, 41 to 60%, 61 to 80%, or is it over 80%? So please do contribute towards this. We always use the feedback that you give us as valuable benchmarking information for everyone that's on the webinar. So the more of you that participate, the more meaningful the results. So we're currently at 61%. If you haven't responded, do so. Just to remind you again, the question, what percentage of invoices do you process electronically today? Is it less than 20%, 21 to 40%, 41 to 60%, 61 to 80%, or over 80% pure electronic? Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. We were at just shy of 70% there. Let's have a look at the results. Well, 8% of you are very much world-class with over 80% pure electronic. So 8% of you coming in at very much world-class at over 80% pure electronic. So very much at the kind of the sharp end of the market, and we've got 64% with less than 20% electronic today. So a way to go there. Back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Susie. So Basware has been, as I mentioned before, working with more than 1,600 international customers across banking, retail, energy, professional services, public sector organizations in central, local, and third sector government areas. But I suppose this allows us to not only leverage industry-specific experience, but also aids the programs when we're looking at industry-specific technology as well. I'd say, much of accounts payable automation, procurement, electronic invoicing is similar across industries, if you will. 85% of it is similar across industries. But having that breadth of experience across the 15% of the nuances that may be specific to an industry vertical such as energy, or when you look at the amount of electronic invoicing saturation within a specific industry vertical, which is quite important when you're looking at different e-invoicing providers. So we've had, again, experience with over 1,600 international customers across just about every industry vertical you can imagine. At this point, I'd like to hand back over to Susie West just to close out the webinar and begin the Q&A session.
Thank you very much indeed. So we've got a lot of questions coming through. So now's your chance to push through to me any other questions that you'd like. And just before I do that, I would just like to ask as a final poll question, please. We have the March Summit for Leaders in Finance Shared Services, and obviously that's taking place in London. Just going to launch that now before I kick into questions. It's taking place in March, and are you interested in finding out more information? Yes, no thank you, or maybe. Right, I'll leave that open for a moment, and let's get on with questions. So we've got a handful coming through, actually, specifically about the kind of the project piece. So I'll push these over to Linda, if I may. So Linda, Could you just embellish a little bit, please, on the housekeeping point? You mentioned in your lessons learned about housekeeping and preparation. Could you just embellish on what you mean by that?
A lot of our housekeeping was around things like making sure that the supplier master files were set up in a uniform fashion. Obviously that information needs to be pulled through from our ERP system into Basware, and it was being set up differently in each of our different divisions. So we needed to make sure that those kind of things, all these types of files which would be being pulled through from the ERP system into Basware were in a uniform manner so that they could be looked at essentially in the same way no matter what division the Basware process was using. So okay. It was more down to the fact of making sure that things which wouldn't normally have caused a problem to us in the past because of the fact that things were very divisional were then all of a sudden becoming very much part of one common process.
So did you find yourself having to basically cleanse a lot of the data? We had a
lot of cleansing to do. We also had a lot of cleansing of old PO information in there which really needed to be cleared out before we started. All of these things, it's a very good idea to do before you start. It just makes life simple.
And roughly how long did that kind of stuff take? Were you talking weeks? Are you talking months? What if you were going to recommend a period of time, maybe for an organisation that has similar volumes to you, kind of 80, 90, 100,000, what kind of time do you think they might need to spend on that kind of prep work?
I think it all depends whether you're going to dedicate staff to do this or whether you're going to do this as part of the, along with the day job. If doing this along with the day job and taking things just slowly, I would suggest that you give yourself probably 4 to 6 weeks to do this. If you're going to have a dedicated team, then I would say you could probably do it all in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, good. A question coming through on the, we're not asking about commercials at all, that's not the intention of this question, but do you have any kind of stats on the ROI that you've achieved through automating AP? So maybe kind of the length of time that it took you to get your return.
Well, the problem that we had before is we had no way of working out anything. We had no KPIs whatsoever.
Right.
Because everything was being done in a non-uniform fashion, we did not have any KPIs. So we really don't have anything to compare it to. But one thing that we do know is we now have a very slick process, and we also have all the divisions competing against each other to make that process a lot more slick and efficient.
Okay, so you didn't really have a baseline of
we had no real baseline. We just knew that we had problems and we needed to resolve them.
Okay. Now you were also talking about the importance of having a very strong project manager, and this is coming up again and again when we're talking about technology deployment. In your view, Linda, what characterises a strong project manager? That's my first question. And second, my question, what part of the business do they come from?
I'll answer the second part first. The second part, they must come from the business. They must be part of the AP team. I would say quite a strong senior member of the AP team. They know the process that they are following inside out. They know the problems that they're encountering day to day. They are living with these problems. So it's in their best interest to make sure that any system that we want to implement is going to resolve the major problems. I think it's important that they be very strong and be very certain in what they want to achieve, but to be open as well, not be blinkered to this is the way that we have done it for so many years and we will continue to do this. The system might do something which helps provide the solution in a more easy and better format, but this is not what we're used to. You really are looking for a very strong business lead who has an open mind.
Okay, and as far as your project was concerned, because it's going to be more effective if the project manager has strong backing.
Yeah.
What was your kind of sponsorship scenario?
Our sponsorship, major sponsor of this was our area finance director and also our area IT manager.
Okay, and how? I mean, as sponsors, the area of finance and area of IT. What was it in particular that you kind of really liked from their support that you think really helped make the project successful?
If we needed decisions made quickly, they were there, and also the fact that they were looking at things from a higher level. Whenever you get really involved in the project, you sometimes get really involved in the nitty-gritty and don't tend to be able to step back and take a more sort of high-level perspective of things. They were there to provide that, and they were also there to look at it from the point of view of the wider business as well, which was very helpful.
Okay. You've mentioned, again, I've got a couple more questions around the project management piece actually, so I think I'll stick with that just for a moment. So with the project manager, you're talking about the importance about having a full-time project manager. How long is that particular individual full-time for on this project?
With ours it was, I would probably say, approximately 6 months.
It was about 6 months, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we did extensive UAT, and that's why it took so long. But as I say, it was well worth it when we had such a smooth go live.
And the period of disengagement after that 6-month period came then because of what reasons?
We didn't have disengagement after that 6-month period. As soon as we went live, the project manager was essentially back to doing their day job. We had very few problems when we went live.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We showed the document button there, which has proven to be very popular functionality within Aggreko. Could you elaborate, please, on exactly what it is that the user experiences because of that document button?
This document button is available, I think it's about 10 to 12 programs within our MoveX system, be that from looking at an account within your general ledger. A line item on there can be clicked upon and the document button will appear. Anything to payment runs, to looking at things within the AP ledger. It's accessible from anywhere you could humanly imagine you would want to look at this information. You don't then have to go back into Basware. You don't have to rummage through a whole pile of invoices in paper form. It is there for all to see who have access to this document button and who have access to these programs within our ERP system.
Okay, so it's just kind of it's aided with visibility and therefore increased kind of control over the process. You talked about how one benefit is that AP is now becoming an asset. Again, could you elaborate on that, please?
Well, basically we're spending less time photocopying and scanning copy invoices and more time actually dealing with the problems which we have with suppliers. So it's more quality time, more focused time, able to help the business analysts with genuine issues that they have, as opposed to can you just photocopy me an invoice. Mm-hmm. So they're now becoming true business partners to the business analysts and being able to flag things before it gets to month end, where we were looking at the results and people looking at the P&L would discover that there was maybe a slight problem somewhere. Mm-hmm. The AP team are now flagging this up before it gets that far, so obviously helping to smooth the month end process. Okay, good.
You talked a little bit about some geographies that are within your roadmap moving forward. What other kind of automation plans have you got for the AP function as it stands today for the future?
At the moment, we are rolling out our existing AP automation functionality to the rest of Agreco worldwide. As you probably noticed from the slides, that's happening rather rapidly. We would like to get everyone onto the same platform before we then start to pilot extending that slightly. We need to have some sort of project team in place for that, and that will be a global project team to discuss where we go from here. And yet again, that will be piloted in one area. Probably yet again, Europe and the Middle East, seeing as the pilot went so well here.
Okay, good. I've got a couple of questions specifically on e-invoicing for you, Andrew. So questions around kind of the legalities and archiving, etc. of e-invoicing does tend to come up generally when we talk about e-invoicing. When you could you just maybe just focus a little bit on Europe, and maybe if you are able to just give a bit of an overview of the geographies where you're actually using e-invoicing today. You have clients, buyer clients actually using e-invoicing today in Europe.
Sure. Yes, I think our largest customers are deploying e-invoicing across 96, 98 plus countries all around the world, whether it be the Americas, EMEA, Asia Pacific, et cetera, et cetera. So we do have customers going across essentially all major countries where business operations are in place today. I think the compliance and legality elements around electronic invoicing, as you mentioned, it's definitely a concern, and it's something that differs region by region. We have our product management team, which works together with the major audit firms to ensure what we are offering does comply with different legislations. I think the EU as a whole has done a magnificent job to kind of start to drive standards beyond that. But what you see is, for example, the Tax Simplification Act, if you will, that was just ratified in Germany earlier this year, has now removed the need for digital signatures, if you will, for electronic invoices. And there are many different, for example, in South America, there are different areas where electronic invoicing has been mandated by the government, as well as some Northern European countries. But what our product management team does is go out and to work with the auditors and across these regions to ensure compliance. But it is something that you always have to be aware of. But what you do find is it's always about authenticity, one, and, for example, Germany loosening the requirements around digital signatures there. But two, it's about having machine legible or accessible records in your archive to be able to pull those transactions up in uneditable format. That's really the commonality around the globe. But what you're seeing is that the standards are largely beginning to harmonize. But then you also have other areas in Asia Pacific where electronic invoicing is not adopted as across businesses and organizations. So, and I guess the other thing that you need to look at, especially when even outsourcing scan and capture operations, right, is certain countries, perhaps if you look at Amsterdam and other regions, when reclaiming VAT, if you will, you have to look at, do we maintain original copies of these paper documents somewhere, or are we able to destroy them? So again, it goes into the record retention policies within your organization and aligned with government and VAT compliance areas. So I'm sorry, long-winded answer, but that's a really deep and broad topic.
Okay, absolutely. No, I thought that might be quite a big question for you. So Linda, thank you very much indeed for that very, very thorough and detailed overview, and very exciting story indeed there. And Andrew, thank you for giving us such a comprehensive overview of the Basware solution and your views on the market as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's drawing our webinar today with Aggreko and Basware to a close. I just want to draw your attention that next week we have a series of webinars on transforming finance with your SAP system. So if you haven't registered for those back-to-back webinars, please do so. And we have two announcements of webinars coming up for after Christmas, and then two conferences that we've got: our European Summit taking place in London, and then we have the Procure to Pay Leaders Summit taking place in Chicago in May. So this is our final sponsored webinar before Christmas, and I'm going to be handing over to my colleague next week. He's going to be running the SAP webinar, so it's my final